take a look at the first problem. The first problem, I'm gonna copy that to here. First thing that I would like you to do is to pause the video for a moment. Try to see if you are able to draw the graph of this guy in the polar coordinates. So the idea is use the previous section. The idea is first draw this into Cartesian coordinates and then translate that into polar coordinates. So I would advise you pause for a moment, draw the graph. So this is the graph of 1 minus cosine theta in Cartesian coordinates. You can first draw the cosine and then flip it across the x-axis and then shift it up by 1, right? So that should not be too much trouble. And then after you have that, now I would translate that into polar coordinates. So I'm gonna have a couple segments here. The first one is, let's call this as my first piece, second piece, third, and the fourth. Okay, so let's discuss those. And in my first piece, it's the angle is increasing from 0 to pi, and the radius is increasing from 0 to 1. So it looks like if I call this as my radius 1, this is, oops, there's 1, this is 2, so it's gonna be something like that, right? I'm trying my best. So when angle is 0, it's 0, and then radius is increasing when the angle is increasing to 1. So this is my 1. My second piece is the angle is increasing from pi over 2 to pi, and my radius is increasing to 1 to 2. So it seems to me my this is my 1, this is my 2. Okay, so which means the graph is increasing, and then the radius is also increasing, so something like that. Okay, and the third piece is when angle from pi to 3 pi over 2, the radius decrease from 2 to 1, which is from 2 to 1 now. And the very last piece, from 3 pi over 2 to 2 pi, the radius decrease from 1 to 0, so which looks like that. Okay, so we went through this process. My drawing here is not perfect, especially when I use a touchpad. It's not that easy for me to draw, but I would like to go to the ebook, show you what it looks like. So this is the graph. Okay, this is the graph of this 1 minus cosine theta. Now, so we've done with the graph, and I now want to continue to do the derivative. If you can recall the derivative dy dx, again, usually it's difficult to memorize formulas, right? So usually I tend to not to just memorize formula. I try to derive my own sometimes. If you know y is r sine theta, just go ahead and find the derivative of this guy. So r is 1 minus cosine. The first term is r prime, which is the derivative of 1 minus cosine. It will be just sine theta, right? This is my r prime times sine theta. I'm using products rule right here, plus r times the derivative of sine theta, which is cosine theta. You see, I will not memorize this formula. I just derive it when I need it. And if you can, of course, you have to know that y is sine, r sine, x is r cosine. So let's find the derivative with respect to theta for x. So it will be r prime, which is sine theta, we just discussed that, times cosine theta, plus r times the derivative of cosine, which is negative sine theta, right? So this is our derivative. Now, let's continue to simplify. Here we have this r is, I'm going to replace that with 1 minus cosine theta. Okay, and this r is 1 minus cosine theta. Okay, let's simplify that. So here we have the top sine theta squared, And here 1 minus cosine theta times my cosine theta is equal to, so plus cosine theta minus cosine theta square, right? Cosine theta square divided by, on the bottom I have sine cosine, and then I have minus cosine. So 1 times sine is minus cosine. I'm sorry, minus sine, and then minus cosine times minus sine, which is plus sine cosine. Okay. And now let's continue to simplify. If you can recall, sine theta square is actually equal to 1 minus cosine theta square. So I want to keep that in mind. So this is 1 minus cosine theta square. So plus cosine minus cosine theta square, which means I have negative 2 cosine theta square, right? And then I still have another plus cosine. And I have a 1. I'm left with another 1. So those are all the terms on top. And the bottom, you can see that actually sine, there are 2 sine theta cosine theta. So I get this one minus sine of theta. So far this is good. Now I know we are gonna need some information for the part B. I'm the part C. So I wanna do a little simplification right here. The top, actually, you can factor that as negative 2 cosine theta plus 1, and then cosine theta minus 1. And the bottom one, you can factor out the sine theta, and then you're left with 2 cosine theta minus 1. This step is used for the very last problem. Okay, so this is part 1. This is we found the dy dx. Okay, I'm gonna make a separate video for the part